Okay, so have you ever gotten off like a roller coaster and kind of felt surprisingly good? Like maybe even a little less tense
Yeah,
than when you got on? Like, have you ever had that experience?
I've definitely had that feeling after, after a good thrill ride. You kind of get that like adrenaline rush and then a sense of relief afterwards.
Yeah, and it might sound a bit out there, but today we're diving into this really unexpected area. Could a trip to an amusement park actually have some kind of hidden health perk?
Yeah, and what's interesting here is how something that starts as like just a purely anecdotal observation, people telling stories, can actually spark some serious scientific investigation.
Totally, and that's what we're talking about today. And the specific thing we're talking about is kidney stones, right?
Yeah.
Those tiny, incredibly painful little mineral deposits. And the goal of this deep dive is to explore this study that was published in the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association, the JAOA, and we're going to unpack their findings on a rather unique way to potentially help pass these stones. And we want to try to give you the core insights without getting too bogged down in like complicated medical terminology.
Right, so you're getting the essential information from some really interesting research.
Exactly. And the story that got this whole thing rolling is pretty remarkable. Doctors apparently started hearing from patients that they had passed kidney stones after riding a particular roller coaster.
Oh, wow.
The big Thunder Mountain Railroad roller coaster at Walt Disney World.
Oh, I've been on that one.
Have you?
Yeah, it's
It's a good one. And get this, one patient even reported passing a stone after each of 3 consecutive rides.
Wow, so 3 rides, 3 stones.
3 for 3. Talk
Yeah.
about an unexpected bonus to your theme park visit.
Yeah, it's the kind of story that you hear and you're initially maybe a little skeptical,
Mm,
but then you think, could there be something to this?
yeah.
And that's really where like good science can sometimes begin.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So let's get into the actual study itself. The lead researcher was a Dr. David D. Wardinger, and he was a professor of urology. So that's the branch of medicine that focuses on the urinary tract at Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. And now he's a professor emeritus.
Okay.
But it was those patient reports that really kind of piqued his interest.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
It's not every day that you hear about roller coasters and kidney stones in the same sentence.
right. So, they had to figure out, okay, how do we test this?
Yeah, because obviously you can't just, repeatedly send patients with kidney stones on a roller coaster for research purposes. There's some ethical and logistical challenges there.
Yeah, for sure. So they had to get a little creative, and Dr. Wardinger and his colleague, Dr. Mark A. Mitchell, they used 3D printing to create like this see-through silicone model of a kidney.
Oh, wow.
But here's what's really interesting. It wasn't just like a generic kidney. It was actually based on the specific anatomy of that patient who had reported passing the stones after riding Big Thunder Mountain Railroad.
So they personalized it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like an individualized model.
Huh. So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, everyone's anatomy is a little different, so using a model that's tailored to the specific patient who had those initial experiences makes the study a lot more relevant.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, creating this physical model was crucial because, like you said, ethically and practically, you can't just be, sending people on roller coasters over and over again,
Right.
especially if they have these painful conditions.
Yeah, using a model allows for a much more controlled and repeatable experiment, which is, really important in science.
Totally.
Yeah.
So they create this model and then they filled it with real urine
Okay.
and 3 kidney stones of different sizes.
Okay.
Now, the initial aim of this part of the study wasn't even about the roller coaster, believe it or not.
Oh.
It was just to make sure that this 3D printed model was a reliable tool for their research.
So they needed to validate their testing ground before they even started the main experiment.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of like laying the foundation.
So confirming that their method of studying kidney stone passage in this model actually worked accurately before they applied it to the roller coaster scenario, that's a fundamental part of good scientific practice.
Right. And based on this initial validation phase, Dr. Wardinger said, preliminary study findings support the anecdotal evidence that a ride on a moderate intensity roller coaster could benefit some patients with small kidney stones. So pretty fascinating that just that initial hunch, seemed to at least hold up in their preliminary lab work.
Yeah, it's like the first bit of evidence that suggests, hey, maybe there's something worth investigating further here.
Yeah, definitely. And you might be listening to this thinking, okay, well, how big of a deal are kidney stones, really?
Right.
Is this something that we should even be paying attention to?
And it's important to understand why research into kidney stones is actually quite relevant. This isn't just like a rare or insignificant condition.
Yeah, you're totally right. We're talking about over 300,000 visits to the emergency room in the US every single year because of kidney stones. And the financial impact is huge, like an estimated $2.1 billion annually.
Wow, those are some serious numbers.
Yeah,
That really highlights the burden this condition places on individuals and the healthcare system as a whole.
right. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And beyond just the financial impact, it's also surprisingly common. It's estimated that around 11% of men and 6% of women will experience a kidney stone at some point in their lives.
Wow, so that's a significant portion of the population.
Yeah.
So finding ways to prevent them or help people pass them more easily is a pretty big deal in terms of public health.
Yeah, totally. And this kind of brings us back to Dr. Wardinger's background as an osteopathic physician. And he really highlighted the osteopathic philosophy, which emphasizes prevention and the body's natural ability to heal. And he even said, what could be more osteopathic than finding a relatively low-cost, non-invasive treatment that could prevent suffering for hundreds of thousands of patients?
I see. So it's about working with the body's own mechanisms rather than always resorting to like surgery or medication. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, so it really frames this whole roller coaster idea in a really interesting light,
Hmm.
as a potentially natural way to encourage the body to do what it needs to do.
Hmm. Like a sort of nudge in the right direction.
Right, rather than, always immediately jumping to more like invasive or expensive procedures.
Yeah, viewing it as a way to potentially assist the body's own processes rather than just trying to force a solution.
Right. And so how did they actually put this roller coaster theory to the test?
Yeah, get to the good stuff.
Right. So as we mentioned, the specific ride was Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Walt Disney World in Orlando.
Of course.
And yes, they did get permission from the park to conduct their research. Can you imagine like that conversation? Hi, we'd like to ride your roller coaster 20 times with a model of a kidney and a backpack.
I mean, I bet that raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I would think so. So they take their kidney model complete with the 3 actual kidney stones of varying sizes placed in different locations within it, the upper, the middle, the lower sections. And they rode Big Thunder Mountain a total of 20 times,
Okay.
keeping the model discreetly inside a backpack.
Okay.
So that's like 60 individual ride outcomes that they could analyze, considering the different stone positions and sizes.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
It's a lot of roller coaster rides.
Wow.
And then they, very carefully analyze what happened to the stones after each of those rides.
Looking for any patterns or trends?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at how several factors, the kidney stone's size, its initial location within the kidney model, and then crucially where they sat on the roller coaster, like front versus rear car, influenced whether the stones moved and hopefully passed. And this is where the findings get really, really interesting.
I'm on the edge of my seat here.
So when the kidney model was placed in the back of the roller coaster, the passage rate for the stones was a surprisingly high 63.89%.
Wow, that's a lot higher than I would have expected.
Yeah.
Just from
Yeah.
the vibrations and movements of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and what's even more notable is that this was consistent regardless of the stone size or where it was initially located within the model.
Huh. So it seems like sitting in the back was the key factor.
Yeah, and now compare that to when the kidney model was in the front of the roller coaster.
Oh.
In that case, the passage rate was only 16.67%.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, so a pretty dramatic difference, highlighting that, the specific types of motion and forces that are experienced in different parts of the ride likely play a critical role.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about being on any roller coaster, but something specific to the forces and movements on Big Thunder Mountain, and crucially where you were sitting on it.
Exactly. And they also did some initial tests on other rides at Walt Disney World,
Oh, really?
specifically Space Mountain and the Walt Disney World Railroad. But Big Thunder Mountain seemed to provide the right kind of moderate intensity and specific movements that might be most beneficial. So it wasn't just any thrill ride.
Yeah, it suggests there's a particular sweet spot in terms of the type and intensity of the roller coaster experience for this potential effect.
Right. And Dr. Wardinger really emphasized the potential real-world benefits of these findings. He pointed out that if small kidney stones can be passed in this way, it could potentially reduce the need for more invasive treatments like surgery and those often really painful emergency room visits. Think about being able to pass a small stone relatively easily before it grows larger and causes more severe issues.
That'd be a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, and he also suggested some really interesting potential applications.
Oh, like what?
Well, he was thinking it could be really helpful following procedures like lithotripsy, where they use sound waves to break up larger stones into smaller fragments
Okay.
and to help those fragments pass more easily after the procedure.
So kind of like a follow-up treatment.
Yeah, exactly. And also he was thinking about, women who are planning pregnancies, proactively passing smaller stones beforehand could potentially help prevent complications later on in the pregnancy.
So it's like a preventative measure as well.
Right. So these are all like really interesting and potentially really practical applications of this research.
Yeah, these are really interesting potential proactive steps that could significantly improve patient outcomes and overall quality of life.
Totally. And we've mentioned a few times that this research was published in the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association, the JAOA. And I think it's probably helpful for our listeners to know a little bit about this publication to kind of understand the context of these findings.
Right, because not all publications are created equal.
Right. So the JAOA is the official peer-reviewed scientific publication of the American Osteopathic Association.
Okay.
And it's edited by Dr. Robert Orenstein. And it's considered like the leading scholarly publication for osteopathic medicine in the U.S., and their mission is centered around advancing medicine through rigorous peer-reviewed research. So this isn't like some obscure publication. It's a very reputable journal where medical professionals share and scrutinize research findings. So the fact that this study was published there means that it underwent a very careful review process by other experts in the field, which, really adds weight to its findings.
Absolutely. It indicates that the research met certain standards of scientific rigor and was deemed worthy of dissemination to the medical community.
Exactly. So to bring it all together for our listeners, the key takeaway from this deep dive is quite surprising. Research using this really carefully designed 3D printed kidney model suggests that riding a moderate intensity roller coaster like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, particularly if you're sitting in the back, showed a significantly higher rate of passage for small kidney stones.
Yeah, it's a compelling illustration of how these seemingly random observations can lead to systematic scientific inquiry with potential implications for managing a common and often painful medical condition.
And for you, our listener, who appreciates getting to the heart of interesting topics quickly and thoroughly, this study offers a fascinating, albeit preliminary, insight into a very non-conventional approach to a really common health issue.
Right.
And it's a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected activities might have surprising effects on our bodies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, this whole deep dive raises a really thought-provoking question for you, our listeners. Given these really intriguing findings, what other seemingly unrelated activities might have unexpected benefits for our health that we haven't even discovered yet?
Yeah.
And what further research might be needed to explore these fascinating and potentially life-enhancing possibilities?
Yeah.
It certainly encourages us to think more broadly about the connections between our everyday experiences and our well-being.
Totally. I love that.
Thanks for having me on to talk about this. It was a really fun topic.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to be thinking about kidney stones the next time I'm at an amusement park.
Me too. And maybe we should try to get some funding to do some more research on those other roller coasters.
Yeah, let's write that grant proposal.
Sounds good.
All right, well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye, everyone.